The Florida community of mindfulness is happy to make these talks available to you. If you find this talk to be a benefit, please consider making a donation to support us. You'll find a donation button on the Talks section of our website, floridamindfulness.org. Thank you, and may you be happy and free of suffering.
Thank you for coming this morning. This has been a sort of full weekend in our community. We have a guest, Brother Fulfillment, aka Brother Man, visiting us, and he has graciously attended our wake-up group, our group for people in their 20s and 30s on Friday night. He gave a very well-attended workshop yesterday morning on mindful communication, helped facilitate a tea ceremony last night. But he doesn't work Sunday morning, so we gave him Sunday off. Kind of union rules from Blue Cliff. But he will there'll be another opportunity tonight. He will be facilitating a forum, which is really an open, non-agenda opportunity for the community to interact with him and perhaps ask him questions about monastic life, about life at Plum Village, Thich Nhat Hanh, other monasteries he's been at, some of his own interests as a practitioner, a monastic practitioner of the Dharma. So it'll be, and then when I announced this last night, he said he reserves the right to ask us questions. So I said that seems only fair. So we'll see what happens. So today I want to continue. I think many of you know, for many months now, we have we do many things in this community, but there's sort of been a theme. One of the themes that we've been weaving over these past months is something I think we call nourishing well-being, which is really an attempt by myself and our board of our Florida Community of Mindfulness to really let our members and everyone really who comes that we really have to attend to the well-being of our body-minds. Obviously, the practices and the meditations are doing that, but in a more kind of anyhow, it's spreading the message that we need to attend to these things. And the first month was spent on the body, really, and we're using kind of as our template a fairly obscure Buddhist sutra sutta on the four nutriments that Thich Nhat Hanh sort of resurrected from relative obscurity and really has made it a wonderful center of his teaching and his community on the four nutriments. And I think he resurrected it because he understands that this is a fundamental issue in the world today. I mean, and it says the four nutriments, but we can really look at it as consumption. But it's a way of looking at consumption in a very unique way. The first of the four nutriments has to do with edible food. So it really begins, I think, where we are most obviously aware. Right, we are aware that we have these bodies and that we eat, we consume food, and that we consume food to nourish the well-being of our body. But we also know that many people do not utilize food in that way. For pure nourishment, we utilize food in many ways, unfortunately. It often are harm. So, and again, I believe there's on our website, there's a whole page with resources and talks and articles on this Nourishing Well-Being initiative. True? Under community programs, that's accessible to everyone. So I won't. So we're sort of coming. I mean, we're not coming to an end, but we're going to begin a new theme this week. But I think, if you think about your body as a vehicle, you see. Many of us don't think of our body as a vehicle. We actually identify very much with our body and see it as a means of attracting, see it as a means of getting some enjoyment, see it as a means of meeting emotional needs. I mean, we see our bodies in many ways other than simply what it is. It's a vehicle. It's a vehicle for what? Well, that we'll get into. But just in the same way, if you think about your own vehicle, you want to make sure that your vehicle is giving what? The right kind of gasoline. I mean, it sounds kind of simple. You don't put the wrong gasoline in your car, do you? You put the right gasoline. Why do you put the right gasoline? Because you know that's best for the car. Why do you get the best oil or the right oil for the car? Why do you take care of your car? Why, when there's a problem, do you fix it yourself or you bring it to the mechanic? Why do you clean it? You know, all these things. Because we want our vehicle to be available to us, right? So we have to begin to conceive of as our body as a vehicle for our life, for what we want to go and where we want to go in life. But the other interesting thing, and I think this is, again, part of Thich Nhat Hanh's kind of bringing things into the modern world, we are learning that if we just have a very narrow focus on the car and what goes into the car, we're missing a larger context of what's going on in the world, such as, well, the type of fuels that we put in the car, right? We all of a sudden understanding has a lot to do with our environment. Right? Renewable resources, climate change, global warming, right? So we see that there is an interconnection with the broader fabric of life of our community, meaning the human community, that transcends just the individual needs of the car. So we're learning to see a context in which, now we're having electric cars and hybrids and all these other kinds of things and looking at these kind of uses. So in the same way, when we approach the edible food, the first nutriment, which has to do with our physical bodies, we're also looking at, again, the broader issues, such as, where's my food coming from? What are the costs to other forms of life, to our planet, to the well-being of our planet, that directly relate to the way I consume and the foods I consume? Is that clear? So, and I think you're all familiar with this, but can you see where we're looking at, in this case, the body, not simply as a physical, edible food things, but also in the wider context of society and the choices we make in the well-being of the whole physical world. So I won't belabor that, but I mean that's sort of how we're doing it. And I think we are having a panel. I think the first week in September, where we're looking at this issue of edible foods and plant-based diet. We'll have a physician here talking about certain aspects of it and other people on the panel. But again, that we begin to think about, right? This, what am I nourishing my body with? How am I taking care of my body? And how does that relate to taking care of the body of the planet, you see? We are interconnected in this world today, very interconnected. So again, that's sort of what I think. There have been a number of talks over these past months by myself and others on this first nutriment. And I think again, the first nutriment is sort of very, most easily accessible to us because we are aware of nutrition and food and bodies, and and we have a very body-centric culture. I mean, it's sort of it's kind of our major obsession: our bodies, taking care of our bodies, and how our bodies look and feel, and So there's nothing I'm not telling you. Now we are, if we're anything as a human being, we might say we are bodies and minds, right? Now, the second nutriment, which is sense impressions, is really the connecting point of the physical and we might say the mental, emotional. So the second nutriment is sense impressions. Again, it's a different way of looking at our life as human beings. Again, in the same way that we consume food, edible substances, and that has effect, positive, negative, neutral, on our bodies and society, in the same way we are consuming experiences. Is that clear? So it's a different way of looking at it. In the same way that our body is taking in food and digesting it, and sort of the nutritious, the nutriment value of the food has a lot to do with what's, whether our bodies are healthy or not healthy, what's being integrated into our body through the food we eat. But we often don't think about how the things our minds are consuming are also affecting our minds. It's kind of simple, isn't it? But we don't really understand this. And the next three nutriments, which are sense impressions, volition, will, and consciousness, all relate to the way our minds consume and the wholesomeness or unwholesomeness of that, and how that then conditions our mind. If any of you are sitting here wondering, how did I end up with the mind I have? Right? Right? Especially if you begin to meditate, so you have a very direct window on your mind. If you ever wonder, how did it come to this? Well, it's because we have been consuming many things over the course of our life, which has conditioned our mind. The same way the things we eat and the way we exercise or don't exercise, the healthy, unhealthy foods we eat, whether we get enough sleep, all these kinds of things condition our body. Things are conditioning our mind. The first one to look at, and that's what I'll talk about today, and where we're going in our community, and I think it's, again, very essential, is the sense impressions. Now, what does this mean? We have, how do we connect with the world? Right? We are sentient beings. You've heard, that's a common Buddhist term. Sentient, rather than human beings, Buddhism talks about sentient beings. We are beings that have senses. We sense the world. We're alive to the world. Now, how are we alive to the world? How do we connect to the world? How do we touch the world? Very simple. We see, we hear, we smell, we taste, and we feel. Is that clear? So this is like very basic and yet often unknown to us because we're so much in our heads, you see. But if you think about it, how do I experience everything? How do I experience relationship? I mean, it's all because I see, I hear, I smell, I taste, and I sense in my body. That's our connectors. Thich Nhat Hanh likes to talk about the senses, which is a very interesting term, as touching, right? So when I see you, my eyes are touching you. When I hear a sound, my ears are touching the sound. You see, it has an intimate quality to it when you think about touching. So we are connecting to the world through our senses. Right? And when we connect with an object, which is we're doing all the time, we're always seeing and smelling and tasting and feeling, we have different kinds of experiences, don't we? Basically, we have either pleasant experiences, from mild to much pleasure. We have unpleasant experiences, right? And we have neutral experiences. And that process is going on all the time, right? And it is the way our mind, if it's in reality at all, connects with the world. I mean, we generate our thoughts We generate our emotional responses, right? Because we are seeing, smelling, all that to the world. Is that? I mean, just nod your heads if you're with me. Is anybody not with me? I mean, don't feel embarrassed. Because it's very simple, but there's a process here, which is very basic to Buddhist psychology to understand, how we are where we are. So, we are continually consuming experiences. Maybe that's another way to do it. Is that clear? Through our senses. Now, this is where it gets tricky, right? What kind of sensory experiences am I having, and what are the effects on that in terms of my well-being or ill-being? In the same way we talked earlier, the kind of food I eat, if I live on junk food, if I eat healthy food, if I get enough sleep, if I don't get sleep, if I exercise, and et cetera, has an effect on the physical well-being of my body and disease and health and just energy and all that. The things we're consuming with our minds are also affecting us. But nobody's telling you that, are they? See, nobody's telling you that. What the world is telling us is what? Consume experience. And I'm going to give you an unlimited, endless amount of experiences for you to consume. Is that true? Right? In 100 years or less, are the things we can consume is so astronomically increased that we are just dumbfounded in this endless unfolding of experience. And we don't ask ourselves, is this experience contributing wholesomeness to my mind or unwholesomeness, right? Is it making me healthy, or is it making me sick, or is it just endless neutral? I mean, a lot of times, it's sort of like junk food. Junk food, when you're eating it, it seems like it feels like what? It feels good, right? And you can eat a lot of junk food and you'll feel what? Full. But you're really not getting any nutrition at all, are you? And you could be actually, since you're not eating healthy food, but you're filling up on junk food, it actually may be having a negative effect on your body in the long run. Even though in the short run, it may feel really what? Good. And I assure you that the food processing industry has spent millions, if not billions of dollars to give you a very pleasant experience. They are very sophisticated. They know we like the crunch, and we know we like the right thing of salt and this and sugar, right? So they're very sophisticated. Right? Is that clear? Because they know what we like in the short run. They know what taste we like. They know what things we look at and we find pleasurable to look at. They know what we like to smell. Is that clear? So they manipulate us. So we will do what? We will consume. Have a sensory experience. And yet, is it wholesome? Right. Now, to understand this more deeply, we have to begin to ask ourselves, see, there has to be criteria, right? If our criteria is simply more pleasure, more pleasant experience, right? Then we will endlessly just be consuming everything that appears in the moment to be what? Pleasant. And if we don't want anything that's unpleasant, we will do anything we can not to consume anything with our eyes, with our ears, that appears in the moment to be unpleasant. Right? But that momentary pleasant, unpleasant may not be really what's best for us, what's best for our minds. So the criteria has to be, what kind of mind do you want? In the same way, if you're looking at, how you're eating and sleeping and exercising, you have to ask yourself, what kind of body do I want? Right? Do I want a healthy body, an energized body, a relatively disease-free body? Right? Then the criteria in terms of what I eat, in terms of edible foods and other choices I make around my body will be much more apparent to me. Right? But if I don't have any criteria, I'll be making totally different choices. So, in terms of our experiences of seeing, smelling, tasting, hearing, what are we consuming all day? Think about your life. What kind of experiences are you consuming? Are you eating with your five senses all day long? Anybody want to take a guess? This is not a trick question, by the way. I mean, all right? I mean, what are we doing? We are what? We're having conversations. We're talking. We're listening, right? Mouth and ear and eyes. So we're consuming conversations all day, okay? What else are we consuming all day? We're consuming the news, right? All day long, many people. And these days, right? You can consume the news when? Anytime you want. For those younger people in the audience today, that's new. You see? I mean, I'm 73. When I grew up, there were a couple of newspapers you read during the day, and the news was on at 6 o'clock. And then it was on again at 11. I mean, you may find this amazing. And actually, I am old enough to remember that I think about 11, 12 o'clock on the TV, there was just this kind of thing. I mean, the actual stations went off. There was no TV. I know, you find this amazing. There was no TV, I think, between midnight or, I don't know, and 5 a.m. I mean, it was just blank. Or not blank. They used to have this thing with the channel or something. It was kind of a strange thing. Is that what it was? I don't know. But, yeah, I know. This is kind of amazing. People going, what? Yeah, I mean, And there were like 4 channels, right? I mean, I'm only saying that to see, so we're consuming news endlessly, and different kinds of news. Any kind of news you want, right? In any language you want, right? 24/7. What else are you doing all day? What else are you consuming through your senses? What? Music, right? We're listening to music. All kinds of music. Any way we want it, as we want it, right? What else are we consuming? Movies, right? Again, this may sound to be an amazing thing to younger people. We used to have to go to the movies to see a movie. I mean, I don't know if anybody's old enough to remember going to the movies, and there'd be like, 1 or 2 movies, and it might be there for a week or 2. The same movie. And movies only had 1 screen. I know, this is kind of shocking. For those of you from Wake Up, you can pass you can pass on this historical piece to your peers. Right? So we're consuming, what else are we consuming? Movies. What else are we consuming? What? Google, there you go. And Google, let's say, is an entry to what? To what? To everything. I mean, this is quite unique. We can consume any type of information we want about anything at any time, and it is inexhaustible. It's unfortunate we have to sleep. It's unfortunate we have to do other things, right? Eat, or you know what I'm saying? Because we could just be what? Endlessly, what? Involved with our electronic devices. Our phones. Again, historical night. I wasn't even planning to go there today. This again may be for the wake-up people. Incredible to know. But we used to just have one phone in the house. And the amazing thing about it, it was stationary. I mean, you actually had to go to the phone, and it was connected to the phone. I mean, you couldn't move around. And you had to go there to pick it up. Right? Now you can what? You can, your phone is with you all the time. You can take calls, emails, texts, right? All the time. So, what are people, especially younger people, consume? And now, unfortunately, it has spread into the older generation. What are you consuming all days? Beside this endless information through Google and movies and music and conversation, you're also consuming what? What? Social media, emails, texts, what? Radioactivity. Yeah. I mean, can you see? It's just endless, and it's so accessible. So, and again, we could go on and on. All right, I'm not here to. And again, I just want to say there is research coming out that actually when you get your information and even read in an electronic way, it is a totally different brain experience, cognitive experience, than actually reading the printed word. It is doing something with dopamine, and there's a reason. I just heard this the other day. There's a reason that if you're reading a book and you put it down, you can just put it down. But that if you're somebody who's reading it in an electronic way and you put it down, there's a little bit of almost like an addiction there's a little bit of discomfort. There's a reason. I saw something not too long ago that said that when somebody goes on to check their email or do anything that they're checking, on an average it takes them 23 minutes to get back to whatever they were doing. Everybody know what I'm talking about? And there's a subtlety that has to do with our brain and the chemistry of our brain that is being activated in a very different way than it ever has been. Okay, so what do you hear about sense impressions? No, there are all kinds of other sense impressions. What? There's the blue sky and the sun and flowers, right? Those are sense impressions, right? What are wholesome sense impressions? What nurtures you? Think about it. What nurtures you? Sounds. There are sounds that are actually, and why is the sound of the ocean wholesome for you? It's calming. Oh, that's interesting. Consuming, ears, eyes, smell, going to the beach, and you feel calm. Is calmness, peacefulness, a wholesome emotion? Oh, it is. So therefore, certain kind of experiences nurture a sense of well-being. What other kinds of experiences are wholesome, nurture well-being? What? Petting your cat. Connecting in a positive way feels good. Okay, yeah, petting the cat. Yeah. Are there more than two? Children, being with children, playing with children, reading to children, listening to children can be what? A very pleasant experience. That's quite a wholesome because it's building relationship. Being in a quiet place, very rare these days. I think, what? Gardening, being in nature, gardening, working with the earth, right? Doing some labor in a very direct way that's not mental labor, right? Growing something, flowers, vegetables, it feels good to some people. What else?
Looking at the clouds.
What?
Visualizing clouds.
Yeah, you can, in your imagination, you could be visualizing things. As we were saying, visualizing, you didn't say seeing. Yeah, one can, in one's imagination, one could be imagining things that are actually pleasant or calming or quieting. Yep. Yes. Meditating, mindfulness, calmness, calming, quieting the mind, concentrating, right? Yeah. Quieting, stabilizing, calming the mind. Positive experience? Yeah. What else? Cooking. Like being really present to cooking and the food and the smelling and the color and just the whole meditative process of being in the kitchen. Yeah, it can be very nurturing. It can be a very positive sensory experience. Unfortunately, there is one criteria that has to be there. Which is what? Yeah, mindful. You have to be present to it. Oh, I never thought about that. You don't get any points just for being in the kitchen cooking, because you could be in the kitchen cooking and you could be thinking about this and worrying about that, or listening to that, or listening to the news, so you're actually not consuming through your sensory experiences, are you? You're consuming what? Okay, which we'll be getting to in the next two consumption patterns that are purely the mind. But just like with the edible foods, this, I think, is much more accessible and obvious to us, because this is often what is conditioning our mind. What else is a pleasant experience? What? Movement, exercise, mindful movement. Yeah, exercise when you're present to it. Again, many people, when they exercise these days, they're not present to it, right? If you go to the gym, what are people doing on the treadmill? Watching TV. And what are they watching on TV? The news. So what are they actually consuming? Are they actually consuming an embodied experience, a physical experience? No, they're not connected to their bodies. We are not connected to our body. If you think about your experiences, and I hope one of our processes over these coming weeks will be that we will all begin to log our experiences. But these days, more and more our experiences we're experiencing life through what? It's from here up. And we are less and less in touch with our experiences from the neck down. And even though we might say the eyes, the ears, the nose, and the mouth, 5 of our senses are located in our head, we're often not even in touch with that. Because we are too busy what? Thinking. Consuming electronic information. Is that not true? So, cooking's quite wonderful if we shut everything off and we're just present to the cooking. So, going to the beach is wonderful. But anybody been to the beach recently? What are many people doing at the beach? What? Coughing. Well, somebody say coughing? Yeah, that's true. but on a good day at the beach. Do you ever see people walking up and down the beach? What are many people doing these days? What? Yeah, they're into something. They're listening to something, right? Or they're talking on the phone. So we could say they're at the beach, which has been pointed out can be a very calming, relaxing, nurturing experience, but they're not present to it. There's no mindfulness, there's no present. They are present to what? Right? An electronic experience. That's what they're consuming. Taking pictures. Yeah. Listening. People don't go for walks anymore. They go for walks, but they're what? Listening. More, and some people listen to music, but a lot of people are doing what? Podcasts. Gathering more information. If I only could, what? If I could only, even Dharma talks. I assure you, I tell people, do not do that. You know, how many Dharma talks do you need to get awakened? I'm just being honest here. You know, it's the practice that gets us there. It's not listening to more Dharma talks, but we are, whoever said that, yeah, we have become great consumers of Dharma, right? You know, we listen to it in our car, we listen to it on the computer, we listen to it on our, it's like as if somehow getting more Dharma is somehow going to, get me there. Shut it off. Hear one good Dharma talk a week and practice it. It's all about practice. Yeah, so I think that was helpful. Yeah, consumption patterns. What else nurtures you? Yeah, smiles. Yeah, yeah. And smiling at smiling, connecting with another human being in a positive way. Right? Positive conversations, constructive conversations, supportive conversations. Right? Wonderful. Right? Yeah, there's so many ways. Think of what kind of relationships nurture you. Feel good. Again, you're seeing, hearing, smelling. What kind? Loving. That's a good start. Friendly. Right? Meaningful connections. Yeah, they nurture us. And when you think about it, from this point of view of consumptions, we are experiencing from the time we get up in the morning to the time we go to bed, we are consuming experiences through our senses. So this is very key, again, to this sutra and this teaching, to really begin to see, consumption patterns in my body, consumption patterns in my sense. What am I consuming with my eyes, my ears, my nose, my mouth, and my body all day? Now, again, we can go on with a list, but I think that's important to know, for each of us to know from our own experience, what kind of experiences actually are wholesome for me, are nurturing for me, are supportive of well-being in my mind. And conversely, one has to really know clearly what. Right? Which are the ones which are not. Right? Or they're just junk. If you don't have any criteria, if you go to Publix, you're going to make your choices based on what? If you go into Publix just based on what gives me pleasure. You see, what do I just enjoy eating that gives me momentary pleasure? What do you head for? Potato chips, and they have a whole aisle, right? Just filled with things that's basically non-nutritious, but what? Taste good, don't they? You can just go from one aisle to the next, and that's probably half of it, right? Just stuff that's just given us pleasant, momentary, positive experiences. Is that not true? So you have to have criteria when you go shopping, or it's very easy to what? To make choices that aren't that healthy and nutritious for the well-being of your body, not just today, but for next week, next year, right? So if you think about your life and your consumption patterns, what's not healthy for you? Even though you may do it. Think about it. Violent movies, okay, for you, okay? Because they water the seeds of what? What? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So movies, many different kinds of movies, and a lot of movies these days, while we may find them in the moment, what? Interesting, enjoyable, yet what are they, what am I consuming when I watch that, and what is that doing to my mind? Even if I don't run out on the street and go assault somebody, right? See, it's not like that. People go, well, I'm not, I watch violent movies, and it doesn't turn me into a violent person. That may be true. I'm not one of those who say that is, but is it affecting my mind? I mean, it's interesting. One thing we didn't mention, which seems to be a major consumption of people these days, is what? Video games. Anybody here play video games? Yeah. What? Yeah. Are there many different types of video games? Yeah. What are they? What am I consuming? What is this doing to my mind? Even if I'm not acting out on it, right? If children and adults are spending hours and hours and hours and hours in a virtual world of violence, even though they may not be violent, is that conditioning their minds to tolerate and accept violence as part of the fabric of life? You see what I'm saying? It's yeah. So what do we have? I mean, so come on. What are other things that we have to be aware of in terms of that may be not wholesome for us to cook? What? What?
Candy Crush.
Yes, I don't. No.
It's a video game.
Yeah.
It's not violent, but it is very distracting.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I find myself finding it hard to put it down.
Oh, please! They're very sophisticated. They know what they're doing. What do you think they're paying all these guys lots of money for? These game developers. I mean, they're not paying them tons of money because they want them to develop something that you pick up and you can't put down. Yeah, these are smart people. Huh? Yeah. See, and the other interesting thing we have to ask ourselves about a lot of these things that we consume, even though, like you say, they might not be, in and of itself negative, or harmful, but when I'm consuming this and getting very involved in this and spending hours or minutes at this, and if you look back and go, yeah, I just kind of was just passing time, what could I have been doing? What kind of experiences could I be having been consuming that might have been much more meaningful or helpful or nourishing? Is that clear? So it's not just that things are negative. I mean, my sense of a lot of this electronic world that people are involved in, from the time they get up to the time they go to bed, is unfortunately preventing them from doing things that are much more meaningful with their time. Because it's what? It's so easy. I mean, I started out like not even interested in this stuff, but I found that as I got more involved in the world, because everybody's emailing these days, and there's more stuff, even in terms of Buddhism, on what I mean, and it is. I mean, I have to watch myself because it is so easy, isn't it? Because not only are you involved, but they're just giving you these endless options, Well, did you ever, how about this, or how about that, or you ever try this, or here's a list of things you might be in, and you go, oh, I could be interested. I don't know anything about that. You see what I'm saying? And before you know it, time has gone by. And when you look back, you go, has the quality of my life really improved from what I've been, investigating the last hour? I can't really say it has. We're just collectors of information. We're collectors of sensory experience without ever looking at the quality of the experience. Yes. And then, okay, yeah.
You have the ability now to binge watch thing, and you could never do that before.
You mean one, or you're advising me to?
No. You can binge watch an entire series.
So we're talking about binge watching. Oh, thank you, Brian. Brian's right. That we have a lot of people live streaming. So we're talking about binge watching.
Watch an entire series.
Yeah.
And people spend, in the old days, you had to wait for an episode.
Yeah.
And now you can take the entire weekend,
Yeah.
all the way to Monday and do nothing but sit in front of the television.
Now, again, this may be amazing for the younger people, and they realize, you had to wait a week for the next episode. I mean, this is how torturous our life used to be. We had to wait a whole week, and now, you don't. It's all you can just watch it one after the other, and it's so seductive, isn't it? Because because you can see it, because you want to see it unfold, and you don't have to wait. You see, you don't have to be patient. Think about what this is doing to our minds. We don't have to be patient anymore. We don't have to wait anymore. I mean, anyhow. What else what else is perhaps, yes?
Watching 8 hours of CNN or 2 minutes of Fox.
Hold on. Just to be fair, there are some people who would say, watching 8 hours of Fox or 2 minutes of CNN. I mean, they might, but anyhow, either way, it's a lot. And what does it do to you? You see? Yes, yeah. Think about it. When you watch the news, whatever, and it's really sort of all the same. It depends on your political viewpoint. When you watch the news station that you most identify with, what does it do for you? Think about your mind state. Somebody said you get agitated, when you get attached, you get what? Anxious, worried, angry, sad. What? Confused? Hopeless? I mean, are these healthy emotions which are going to make you, no. So I think we're beginning to understand. Yeah, so what else? What else when you look at your life and your yes?
I rely heavily on Google Maps and Google instead of trying to remember it, so I don't know how to get anywhere. If I die, I'd probably be stranded.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. So the issue was, right, with Google Maps and all the GPS stuff, our ability to kind of learn how to move ourselves around the world and navigate or read a map or have a sense of direction, is not needed anymore. But it does to create a kind of dependency, because if it goes dead or something or gets hacked, I mean, what if they hack it and all of a sudden you're getting all the wrong directions? Right? See, they may not just, but they may just start, so you end up just going all to the wrong places, and that would be a nightmare, wouldn't it? Yeah, but it probably is going to happen. Yes. Yeah.
I was going to say, I feel like maybe could you clarify the underlying point that you're getting at here is more of moderation. Because I also see some people who run from one, what they feel is productive activity or meeting or what have you, to another. And so, of course, let's not watch Netflix or play video games for 8 hours. But isn't there also a positive and wholesome place to take a moment to do something that's just fun, to play a game for an hour that's just fun with no, to relax for a moment? Not in excess.
Yeah.
Or do you feel that's also...
Well, yeah, I was gonna get there in about 5 minutes. So just hold that. But yeah, so So we're first, we're approaching this in a systematic way. First, to understand that in the same way our edible food consumption and our bodies and everything has effects on ourselves and effects on the world. In the same way our sense impression consumption has effects on ourselves, our minds, and on others, right? So positively and negatively. Okay, so that's, yeah, and then we'll end up, where you're being. So, yes.
Yeah, just last night I heard Thich Nhat Hanh say something on internet about mindfully smoking a cigarette,
Uh-huh.
which I thought was interesting. So,
You mean he was recommending it?
yeah, well, he was saying if you're going to do
Oh,
it
yes.
mindfully, that's it.
Uh-huh.
Like
You sure you sure that wasn't somebody imitating him or something?
sure
The,
because I was smoking a cigarette at the time.
what?
I'm quite sure because I was smoking a cigarette at the time.
But he
While listening to Thich Nhat Hanh.
was this a special channel for cigarette smokers that Thich Nhat Hanh is?
It has to do with mindful awareness.
Uh-huh.
It has to do with
Yeah.
also saying sorry to your heart, saying sorry to your lungs, being aware
Yeah.
of what you're doing. That's all. I'm not saying don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's back to this notion of the middle way that was raised by this something. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah. So that's interesting. I mean, I think it begins with mindfulness. I think that's what Ty's saying. I don't think he's encouraging cigarette smoking.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Right, no, I understand. But I think what that's about is if we bring mindfulness, which is what we're talking about here. I mean, what are we doing here today? We're bringing mindfulness to our consumption of information and experience that goes on all the time through our senses. We're becoming mindful that that's going on, and we're becoming mindful of how it's affecting us. Right? That's mindfulness. Mindfulness then allows us to make wise choices. Right? I think Thich Nhat Hanh is believing that if somebody is smoking and they really are mindful of what's going on and how they're taking the smoke into their lungs and how that may be affecting their heart and circulatory system and respiratory system, I think he's going under the idea that somehow if you become aware of that, you will then, from that mindfulness, stop. Because I think there's an intrinsic belief that when you give people, and we're not sure if that's still true anymore, but when you give people the right information, they hopefully will make the right decision. But yeah, so thank you. Yes.
Or maybe, I think I've heard a similar point, but with, say, like overeating or emotional eating, that the awareness might bring you to a place where you see the preceding events that, oh, I get stressed out talking to a coworker, and then I have this desire to overeat or smoke a cigarette or what have you. So to be aware of it, and when you start feeling that urge to go that direction, to go, oh, okay, I've been here before, maybe I can handle it in a different way.
Yeah, so mindfulness is obviously a fundamental aspect of transformation. We have to know, this is why we're beginning where we're beginning, to become aware that we are consuming all day through our sensory experiences, and that, the sutra talks about wholesome, unwholesome, what's nutritious, what's not nutritious, right? So we can make wise choices, first for ourselves, for those around us, and for our world. Because again, we're not alone in this world anymore, right? Any other, when you look at your consumption patterns, where you go, this is not a good one. What? Yes.
I was thinking about the news comment, the need to stay away. But in the last 24 hours, listening to the stories about John McCain, regardless of whether you agree with his politics or not, made
It could be, yeah. So,
Something about what he stood for that is an aspiration in some way.
yeah. So, I mean, again, so he's talking about some recent news story, John McCain death, and I mean, I don't have been, and some of the things have been sort of ennobling, that when you read about him or read about his life, there's a quality that comes through that you find is very wholesome for you. Okay, so, I mean, that's what we're trying to see this morning, that there are things that we imbibe through our sensory experience, right, that are wholesome, that are supportive of the way we want to be in the world and the kind of emotional life we want to have. And there are others which are not. Right? And, one, can we begin by understanding that this process is going on? Two, understanding that there is this wholesome, unwholesome, and neutral. And three, which is the opposite of addiction, is that we have a choice. Right? We have a choice. Which I think many people don't understand that anymore. We have a choice whether to pick this thing up or not. If you don't have a choice, you're addicted. Right? That's a quality. I mean, if you're in the addicted field, how do you know a recreational user from an addict? Right? The recreational user of whatever it is can go yes or no. But the addict, when they see it, they do what? They pick it up. They use. So if we're in relationship, if that phone or whatever it is sitting there and we cannot help but look at it or pick it up every free moment we have, I would call that what? Addiction. There's no freedom in that. Is there? You see, there's no freedom in that. And the research is showing that is what's happening. That many, many people, especially younger people, anytime they get a free moment at all, they are what? Right? And we may recognize ourselves in that. That's addiction. And we have to decide, is this a good addiction for me? Or is addiction good at all? But I mean, is this, again, and the problem with, I think, a lot of this stuff is it appears benign, you see. I often say in our community that Buddhism is big picture. We study Buddhism so we get the big picture of life, the big picture of meaning, the big picture of values, big picture. So we have a big picture, so as we deal with the little decisions throughout the day, there's some reference point of meaning and purpose that we can refer to. But if we don't see the big picture, then so what if I pick this up? Right? Doesn't matter in the small picture. But in the big picture of my life, in the big picture of how I want to nurture my body-mind, what kind of experiences I want to have, you see, that's the bigger picture. And we're living in a world where it's more and more about small picture, right? I mean, our national discourse is now unfolding in what? Tweets. Now, I don't tweet, so I don't even know what it is. But my sense is it's like very short amount of information, is that right? I mean, a tweet is what? 28 characters. I mean, that's what? 140 characters. Yeah. What? Oh, it's increased. Now, these are 280 words, or these are just... When you talk about characters, you mean like letters? Yes. Oh, okay. See, we used to call them letters in my day, but now they're... that seems normal now, right? I mean, that our discourse around very significant issues are being carried on with 280 characters. And I don't care which side you're on. You know what I mean? To me, it's the bigger picture here. Right? I mean, what's our hurry? We have to ask ourselves, what's our hurry? You know, some people have characterized our age as the age of anxiety. Underneath so much is just this low-level anxiety. And we're afraid to stop. That's why as soon as one thing's done, we pick up another. We're just busy, 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 busy. And when we're not busy, we're doing something else. Because when we stop, what happens? How do we feel? Anxious. It's not like we're trembling, but there's an uncomfortableness. And the simplest thing to do when we feel uncomfortable, even for a moment, is to what? You know, distract or fill up that space. Right? Fill up that space. And again, we live in a world now where we can fill up that space all the time. We never have to connect with ourselves. Right? This is why, to me, meditation, mindfulness, is the key. Because it's about connecting at a deeper level with who you are. I mean, what did we do this morning in our meditation? What did we do? What profound, esoteric, metaphysical thing did we do? We connected with what? Our bodies, our somatic experience. We are bodies. We breathe. We're alive. There's an aliveness. I mean, there's an aliveness in us. We are alive. We're sentient beings. But are we in touch with our aliveness? Our natural aliveness, you see. So mindfulness and meditation helps us. You know, it used to be not too long ago in human history that mindfulness, meditation, these kinds of things were the purview of the few, right? The meditators, the people who had strong spiritual aspiration, right? These are, to me, these days, it's almost like a necessity. Because people are so disconnected. I walk in the morning, I live around here, and I see the kids waiting at the bus stop. What are they all doing? Yeah, nobody's talking to each other. Everybody is, and I imagine they get on the bus and it must continue. They're not connecting. People are walking around like this, right? I mean, have you noticed that? People walk around, they don't even have it in their pocket. People walk around like this. Always ready, always looking. What are we connecting with? So this second one of our series, of looking at the second nutriment of sense impressions, I think is so significant for all of us in this modern world. For us, for our children, for the future generations, because something very significant is going on in our world, right? Which is very new. And it's just wonderful that this very ancient teaching, 2,600-year-old teaching on the four nutriments is so relevant. That speaks to us. I think that not too many people speak in this kind of language. So what's the answer? I would say before you come up with answers, I think it's always good to kind of assess first what's going on. So if there's any interest from what you've heard today, and we will probably be doing things, experiment. Just don't make any changes in your use of what you're doing in your life, but keep a little log, and every few minutes just make a little check. What am I? How many times a day do I check my email? How many times a day do I check my text? How many times a day am I on social media? What's the time? How much time a day do I surf the internet? How much time a day do I, watch Netflix or whatever you know? You see what I'm saying? And just, right? Just kind of, rather than kind of guessing or supposing, because oftentimes we know that our subjective ideas of what's going on may not be real. It may be subjective. That's why it's called subjective. So it's good to just, get some sense of what you're doing and be willing. Don't change anything. Just kind of attend to what you're doing and then what it is. What is it I'm watching? And then once you kind of get that done, so you really get all the kind of the very objective facts of what you're doing, then in the coming weeks you can put a new column in, which is, how does it make me feel? You see? See, how do I feel when I'm doing it, and how do I feel afterwards? Okay? So again, it's sort of like you were saying back there. That's where you begin. You begin with mindfulness. I'm just going to bring my mindfulness to my consumption of sensory information. And then notice, how do I feel? And then, then we get to the next criteria, which is, well, how do I want to feel? But now we have objective information about, what we're doing and how it makes me feel. And then we step back to big picture. Well, is this how I want to feel? Okay, is that clear? So again, that's one of the American thing. It's like, hey, tell me what to do, because I want to change it. But sometimes it's good to make a little, assessment first, to really see, is there a problem? And what is the problem? Right? And so again, I think that's a good place to begin with self-awareness, mindfulness of. So good. Any questions or comments before we end for today? Anybody want a challenge? Dragos.
How do you exercise a choice, Fred?
How do you exercise a choice? Give me meaning what, Dragos?
When you probably in such a spectrum that don't know when you have a choice or something, As people said, maybe it's not too bad to watch a stupid flick on Netflix, and you know better.
Right. Well, that's why, yeah. So, again, I don't want to impose, I'm not trying to impose anything today. I'm trying to get us to think and to look and be mindful of. I would say, again, you look, right? Let's say you do that work and really watch Dragos over this coming week and, see where he's spending his time and what he's doing, and okay? And then you make the choice. But you make the choice in terms of the big picture. How do I want to be in life? What's important to me? I mean, you're sitting next to your wife, right? So if you said, connecting in a meaningful way with other human beings, right? Right? That's high on my priority. But when I come home at night, I'm tired, and what do? I veg out in front of a whatever. You see, you might go, well, hold on. This is what I say my aspiration is, right? And yet, what I'm doing is this, and this is what that produces. You see, so it's like, it's not like things are bad. It's not like watching a movie is bad. It's not like going on the internet is bad, you see. We got to get over that bad good. It's like the bigger picture. And again, what was life like before the internet? I mean, again, it may be hard to believe, but this phenomena is like how old? A decade or two? What? Yeah, but I mean, but the significance, the way it is today, I think it's fairly recent, the oversaturation. And yet human beings somehow, lived, had meaningful lives without it. I mean, it may be hard to believe. It's like, what else could I be doing, you see, if I didn't have this thing around? If I couldn't pick it up? What else would I be doing? And for some of us, we might not even, nothing may come to us because our life has become so centered on these devices, you see, and the information it gives us. So, a lot of times looking at life in this way can make us uncomfortable or kind of like, gee, I don't know what to do, right? God, if I don't come home and binge watch this weekend, right, what am I going to do? You see, and that often then that space of time may make us feel what? Uncomfortable, anxious. Oh, that's interesting. Am I willing just to be with that? You see? To see what that's about. So it's a process. And I think, again, a lot of it is just it's sort of like addiction. There's just stimulation. And the idea of not being stimulated is terrifying to an addict. Right? So good, we'll stop now, thank you. So this is just the beginning of this new exploration in terms of the second nutriment, sense, impression.